The loan officer wouldn't look me in the eye. That was the first sign. I had driven 40 minutes across Charlotte that morning with a folder full of documents I'd spent 3 weeks organizing. Pay, stubs, tax returns, bank statements, the whole package. My fiancé had texted me at 7 a.m. to say he'd meet me there, that he was running late from a site visit. I didn't think anything of it. He was always running late from site visits. It was practically his personality. I sat down across from the loan officer, a kind-faced woman named Beverly who had walked us through the pre-approval process, and she immediately reached for a coffee mug that was already empty and pretended to drink from it. "Mrs. Harlow," she started. And right there I knew. Nobody starts a sentence with your last name like that unless the news is bad. She slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. I looked down at it. The mortgage application for the house my fiancé and I had spent 7 months choosing together, the colonial on Pemberton Lane with the big wraparound porch, and the kitchen I had already mentally repainted twice, had been amended 3 weeks earlier. My name was gone, completely removed. The property was being purchased as a sole asset, one borrower. "The amendment came through on March 14th, Beverly said quietly. "I assumed you were aware. I'm so sorry if that isn't the case." I stared at the paper for a long moment. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Charlotte was just starting its morning rush, cabs and coupes and delivery trucks streaming past in total ignorance of the fact that something had just been surgically removed from my future. 47 boxes were sitting in a storage unit I was paying $180 a month for. My parents had driven up from Greenville the night before to help me move this weekend. My younger sister had requested Friday off from her nursing job specifically to be there. They were probably already at my apartment, drinking the coffee I'd brewed in advance, talking about how excited they were for me. I picked up my phone and typed a very short text to my fiancé. "Where are you?" Not a question, he would know the difference. His reply came 4 minutes later, running behind. "Can we talk when I get there?" I already knew I wasn't going to like what came next. Before I get into what happened that morning, I want you to understand something about who I am and how I fit, or didn't fit, into my fiancé's world. My name is Harlow. I'm 29 years old. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, in a 3-bedroom house where my mother worked double shifts at a hospital laundry facility, and my father drove long-haul trucks until his back gave out. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and my parents made absolutely sure that both my sister and I understood that a good education was the one thing nobody could ever take from you. I took that seriously: scholarships, community college transfer, then a state university on academic merit. I graduated with a degree in accounting, passed my CPA exam on the first attempt, and eventually earned my CFE, Certified Fraud Examiner, credential while working 60-hour weeks at a regional forensic accounting firm. I spent my days digging through financial records, tracing shell companies, identifying falsified invoices. I was good at it. My supervisor used to joke that I could smell fraud the way some people smelled rain coming. I met my fiancé at a fundraiser for a local children's hospital 2 years ago. He was handsome and charming and genuinely seemed to find my career fascinating rather than intimidating. His family owned Hartwell Construction, one of the largest commercial and residential development companies in the Carolinas. Old money by regional standards, with a sprawling estate in Ballantine and a family name on 2 donor plaques at the Children's Museum. His mother made her feelings about me clear from the very first dinner, not loudly or dramatically. She was far too composed for that. It was quieter, a pause a half-second too long before she smiled at something I said, a tiny glance exchanged with his sister when I mentioned where I grew up, a comment about how impressive it was that I'd done so well without any advantages. The kind of thing you replay alone at night wondering if you imagined it. I didn't imagine it. For 2 years, I smiled at those dinners. I brought the right wine. I asked his father about golf. I listened to his sister talk about her Pilates studio. I swallowed every casual dismissal and kept smiling because I loved my fiancé, and I told myself that families were complicated and that eventually they would see what he saw in me. What I didn't know then, what I was in the process of figuring out professionally, was that Hartwell Construction had a problem far worse than social snobbery. My fiancé arrived at the mortgage office 14 minutes after I texted him. He walked in wearing a Hartwell Construction jacket and that slightly hunched posture he always carried when he was bracing for something unpleasant. Beverly had quietly excused herself to give us space. He sat down and looked at the paper on the desk and then looked at me with an expression I can only describe as rehearsed regret. "Harlow," he said, "I was going to tell you last night." "Tell me what exactly," I said. My voice was very steady. "That's what happens when you spend years interviewing people who are lying to you. You learn to strip emotion out of your face and put it somewhere useful." He rubbed the back of his neck. "My parents think, and look, I don't completely disagree with them, that with the amount of money going into this house, it makes more sense to keep the title simple for now. One borrower. We can add you after we're actually married." I asked him when he'd made this decision. "A few weeks ago," he said. "March 14th, I said. He blinked. "Yeah, around then. You let me spend the last 3 weeks thinking we were closing together. You let me pack 47 boxes. You let my family drive 4 hours to help me move into a house that doesn't have my name on it." He started to say something about how the timeline had gotten complicated, about how his parents' attorney had flagged something in the contract structure, about how it was genuinely temporary and he should have communicated better. He wasn't wrong about the last part. But he was leaving out the part that mattered, and I could see it in the way his eyes kept dropping to the table. "Why did they really do this?" I asked. He was quiet for a long time. "My mother wanted to talk to you," he said finally. "She asked if you could come to the house this afternoon." His childhood home was a 6,000 square foot property in Ballantyne, with a circular driveway and a fountain that looked vaguely Italian. His mother met me at the door wearing ivory linen and pearl earrings, which was her version of casual. She led me through the foyer, past the family portraits and the antique credenza and the fresh flowers that were replaced every Monday, and into the formal sitting room where she had arranged 2 china cups of tea I had not asked for. She waited until I sat. She was good at theater, his mother. She knew how to let silence do the heavy lifting. "Harlow," she said, setting her cup down with a precise little click, "I'm going to be direct with you, because I think you're the kind of person who appreciates directness." What followed was not directness. It was a 15-minute speech delivered in the tone of someone explaining gravity to a child. She said she had nothing against me personally. She said she admired my drive and my resourcefulness. She said the family had certain long-standing financial structures that required careful management, and that adding a new name to a property of that value before a legal union was officially finalized introduced complications their attorney had advised against. Then she said the quiet part slightly less quietly. She said their family had built something over 3 generations, and that protecting it required making decisions that weren't always comfortable. That her son had obligations to this family that existed before he met me and would exist long after. That she hoped I was mature enough to understand that love and business were separate things, and that a woman who was serious about a future with her son would respect the family's need to manage their assets prudently. She said it the way you'd say it to a housekeeper who had asked for a raise, politely, patiently, with an air of being slightly inconvenienced by the request. I looked at her across the tea service and thought about the 340-page report sitting in a password-protected folder on my work laptop. I had started that report 8 months ago. Hartwell Construction had come up as a tangential entity in a fraud case my firm was supporting for a federal investigation, the kind of thing that starts as a single suspicious invoice and unfolds like a map you didn't realize was folded. What I had found over 8 months of meticulous work was a pattern of bid rigging on public contracts, systematic overbilling on materials that were never delivered, and a series of shell companies used to siphon those overages into private accounts. The numbers were not small. We were talking about millions of dollars in fraudulent billing to municipal and state construction projects over 6 years. I had filed my preliminary findings with my supervisor 2 weeks ago. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had been briefed. A formal referral was pending final review. I had not told my fiancé because I had genuinely believed. Foolishly, I now understood that there was a chance he wasn't involved, that he was just the son who showed up to job sites and handled scheduling while his father and the family's CFO managed the finances. I had wanted to give him the chance to be innocent. Sitting in that formal sitting room, listening to his mother talk to me about protecting assets, I understood something I had been too close to see clearly. She knew who I was. Not just as her son's girlfriend, as a threat. Someone in that family had figured out what I did for a living and connected the dots, and this was their response. Remove my name from the property. reduce my legal standing, make me feel small and contingent and grateful just to be included. They thought removing my name from a mortgage document would neutralize me. They had no idea they had just handed me the clarity I needed to finish what I'd started. His mother finished her speech and looked at me with the patient expression of someone expecting gratitude or surrender. I took a sip of tea. I set the cup down. I thanked her for being candid. Then I drove back to my apartment, sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and called my supervisor. "The Hartwell referral," I said when he picked up. "I think we need to move up the timeline." What happened over the next 72 hours is something I still think about when I need to remind myself that patience is not the same as weakness. My supervisor escalated the case to the FBI field office that same afternoon. The forensic package I had assembled, the shell company registrations, the falsified lien waivers, the contractor testimonials, the side-by-side comparison of billed versus delivered materials on 4 separate municipal projects, was thorough enough that the agents didn't need additional preparation time. They had been waiting on the formal referral. By Thursday morning, they had their warrants. In the meantime, my fiancé had been calling me. Texts first, then calls. His messages ranged from apologetic to confused to a single text at 11 p.m. Wednesday that said his mother had told him the conversation went well and that he hoped I understood. I didn't respond to that one. On Thursday morning at 9:47 a.m., 6 federal agents and 2 investigators from the state attorney general's office walked into the Hartwell Construction corporate headquarters on South Tryon Street and presented the office manager with a search warrant. I know the exact time because I was sitting in my car in the parking structure across the street, drinking gas station coffee, watching it happen. His father arrived at the office at 10:15. I watched him park his Mercedes and walk toward the entrance, and then stop very suddenly when he saw the federal vehicles. He stood there for a moment, the way people do when the world they've constructed around themselves finally stops cooperating. Then one of the agents walked out to meet him, and his father took a small, involuntary step backward, like his body understood before his mind caught up. My phone rang at 10:22. It was my fiancé. "What did you do?" he said when I answered. His voice had that quality I'd heard from 100 interview subjects over the years, the specific timbre of someone who has just realized that the structure they were standing on was never solid. Panic wearing the mask of accusation. "I did my job," I said. "Harlow," he sounded like he was struggling to keep his voice level. "There are federal agents at my father's office. My mother is calling me every 30 seconds. You have to understand, I didn't know everything they were doing. I swear I didn't know the full extent." "I know," I said. "That's why you're not on the warrant." Silence. "But your father is," I continued, "and your family's CFO, and 3 of the subcontractors they used as pass-throughs. The state is going to want to recover approximately $4.2 million in fraudulent public contract billings, plus penalties, plus interest." More silence, then quieter. "Why didn't you tell me you were investigating them?" It was a fair question. I had asked myself the same thing many times over the past 8 months, usually at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. "Because I hoped you were innocent," I said, "and because I loved you enough to give you the chance to be." I heard him exhale. "What does that mean for us?" I thought about the 47 boxes in the storage unit. I thought about my parents waiting in Greenville, my sister who had taken Friday off work. I thought about 2 years of dinners where I smiled until my face hurt, of compliments delivered in tones that made them feel like condescension, of a loan officer who had slid a piece of paper across a desk and looked everywhere in the room except at my face. "It means I'm not signing anything," I said. "Not the mortgage, not the other thing." I heard him start to respond, and I ended the call. My best friend had driven up from Columbia to be with me that afternoon. She was waiting at my apartment with takeout from the Thai place on Park Road, and an expression that asked how bad it was, without requiring me to say it out loud. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is the exact right way to listen when someone is trying to put the shape of a loss into words. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I cancel the storage unit," I said, "and I take my mom and my sister to dinner somewhere nice this weekend instead." She smiled at that. "And the house?" "Not my house," I said. "It never was. It has been 14 months since that Thursday morning." His father entered into a plea agreement with the federal government 6 months ago. The terms included full restitution of $4.2 million in fraudulently obtained public contract funds, a 5-year ban from bidding on any municipal or state projects, and 18 months in a federal corrections facility, which he is currently serving. 2 of the subcontractors pled guilty to related charges. The family's CFO is cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. His mother sold the Ballantyne estate in November to cover the restitution and legal fees. The portraits and the Italian fountain and the Monday flowers are all gone. She's living in a condo now, I've been told. I didn't look up which one. My ex-fiancé, cooperated fully with the investigation, as I had suspected he would once he understood the scope of what his family had done without him. His cooperation was noted favorably in the federal proceedings. He did not face charges. He is no longer at Hartwell Construction, which has been restructured under court supervision. I heard through someone we both know that he took a project management position with a smaller firm on the other side of the state. I wish him no particular harm. I also wish him nothing that belongs to me. I got a promotion in January. My firm expanded its public sector fraud practice, and I was asked to lead it. Partly, my supervisor said, because the Hartwell case demonstrated exactly the kind of patient, methodical work the unit required. I also moved into a different apartment. 1 bedroom, south-facing windows, close enough to a good grocery store that I actually use it. My name is on the lease, only my name. My parents came to visit last month. My mother walked through every room touching the windowsills and the cabinet handles the way she does when she's deciding whether something is real. My father sat on the couch I picked out myself and looked genuinely at ease in a way I hadn't seen from him in years. My sister slept on the pullout and we stayed up past midnight talking about nothing important, which is the best kind of conversation. I keep thinking about something his mother said in that sitting room, that love and business are separate things, that a mature woman would understand the difference. I used to think she was wrong about everything, but she was right about one thing, just not in the way she intended. I had spent 2 years conducting the most important audit of my life and calling it something else entirely. I called it patience, I called it adaptation, I called it love. What it actually was a woman making herself smaller so that a family's balance sheet could stay clean. I know better now. Not because I'm harder or angrier or less willing to trust, but because I finally understood that you cannot build a life on a foundation that was never designed to hold your weight. Some structures look solid right up until you examine the materials, and then you see exactly where the fraud is. Finding that is what I do. I should have looked at my own life sooner, but I'm looking now and the view from here is clear.